Hello, I'm Nick Anderson, and this is the Wednesday Night Show starring me, Nick Anderson. It is going to be a blast on this show. We're going to do all kinds of fun things each week. It's going to air every week, Wednesday at 7 p.m. Unless, of course, I don't want to do it, and then it won't air. I'm kidding. I'm going to do it pretty much every week at 7 p.m. Now, a little bit about me and the show. I'll begin the week I'll begin the show each week with some sort of a monologue, not necessarily what you've seen on other Tonight shows, but my kind of version. And we're going to talk about all kinds of cool things on this show. We're going to talk about beer. We're going to talk about music. We're going to talk about current events, which brings me to our guest tonight. I'm very excited. We have Stephanie Darling, a Chicago registered nurse who has been working directly with COVID-19 patients. So I had a lot of questions for people in the medical field, so I was able to sit down with her yesterday and interview her, which will be aired on this show. Answers a lot of interesting questions about COVID that I had, especially in relationship to how our healthcare workers are dealing with it. I also wanted to start today's show with a very interesting monologue talking about pain points. So pain points are something that marketers use to get people to take action on things. And the reason I want to talk about this today is news stations use this a lot. News papers, news shows, especially the 24-hour news shows, they try to make you upset so that you take action. So I want to talk about a little experiment that I did. But first, let's do some examples of pain points. A good example of a pain point is something that evokes emotion really quickly in you, like something along the lines of, all you liberals. And then right away you're like, gah! Or something like Trump tweeted today that, right away you're feeling an emotion. So to show you just how powerful these things are, I did an experiment on TikTok. The day after Super Tuesday, I made 3 videos for TikTok, one for each candidate, because I could tell people were, all riled up. I made one for Trump, I made one for Biden, I made one for Bernie. I started each video with a pain point. For the Trump video, I said, if you like Trump, just keep scrolling. If you like Bernie, just keep scrolling. I did the same thing for each video. And then I paused. And then I said, if you stayed for the end of this video, let me know. I'm curious to see which supporters stay for the longest video. Now, of course, this isn't how TikTok works, because a bunch of people who aren't Trump supporters would probably see it too and might have stayed. And I told them it was a social experiment to see how many people would hang around from each supporter and like it. But really what I was doing is seeing how a pain point would get people to react. So let's look at the results. Since the release of the videos a few weeks ago, I've gotten over 700,000 views. Yep, 700,000. My Bernie video alone right now has 530,000 views on it. To put this into perspective, when I posted these videos, I had just started my TikTok. So I had 70 likes on my TikTok account. Now I have 91,000. So pain points work, and they're easy to do. I've been a musician for a very long time. None of my music videos have gotten 700,000 views. Pain points are easy, and the news stations use them to get you to engage. Knowing this, I want you to take this to your social media profiles, and I want you to be careful what you share, because I've been seeing a lot of people sharing articles that they're like, I can't believe this. It makes me so mad. It's supposed to, and it made you share it even though you don't agree with it, which is exactly what they want you to do. So I want you to be careful and realize that pain points are getting you to share things that you shouldn't share. All right. Now, on to more fun things. Each week, we're going to have, wait, I made a banner for this. The Craft Beer Corner. This week's craft beer is one of my favorite breweries. In fact, it's a local Eau Claire brewery called The Brewing Project. And we're featuring this week their IPA, Dare Mighty Things. Now, they have a few different IPAs called Dare Mighty Things, but this particular one is the single hop Citra. Um, Before airing it on the show, I did test out a number of these cans to ensure that each of them have the same flavor. And after many, many cans of this beer, I can tell you that they all do taste good. So let's kind of give a flavor profile here. All right, Dear Mighty Things from the Brewing Project. That's good. You can definitely taste the citrus hops in there. And the interesting thing about this beer is when you're drinking it, and even the way it looks, it's kind of hard to tell on the camera, but it's almost like, I don't want to say milkier because it's not milky, but it's like a thicker beer. You can't see right through it. You know what I mean? It's real good. It's real good. And I also just want to talk a little bit about what the Brewing Project is like on the inside. They have this beautiful big building that you can go into, big tap room. It's bare like brick on the walls, really cool atmosphere. A lot of times they host parties where you can watch Packer games and things like that. And they even did a movie night outside. And outside is where it gets really cool because you can see the Eau Claire River. And you can drink, and they have fire pits, and it's awesome. So Brewing Project, definitely check that out. And that was the first beer corner on the Wednesday night show starring Nick Anderson. Now, let's get right into our guest. So our guest this week was Stephanie Darling, a registered nurse from Chicago. I asked her a bunch of questions, and we'll get right into it. This interview is not live. The rest of the show is, but she had to work tonight, so we had to just pre-record it, which is totally fine. So, all right, let's do this. All right, and share.
What is your title at the hospital?
I am a registered nurse, but I'm part of CREW. It's called the Clinical Resource Unit. So basically we're float pool. So our hospital has its own float pool, and I call about an hour before every shift and I find out which floor I'm floating to.
Okay, cool. Since the start of like all of this craziness, has your work schedule changed a bunch?
My schedule hasn't really changed. I mean, nurses in general never have like set schedules. Every single week you work different days. And I haven't necessarily worked more yet. I mean, I'm in the middle of a very long streak of work right now, but it's not any more hours, but I'm sure that they're going to start asking us to for multiple reasons, because the last time I worked, like 12 nurses called off, which is a huge
What is your title at the hospital?
but it's not any more hours, but I'm sure that they're going to start asking us to for multiple reasons, because the last time I worked,
now we got it figured out. Sorry about that, folks.
Off, which is a huge amount of nurses for our hospital.
Okay.
And they know, my manager recently sent out an email and was like, tell me how far your distance is to the hospital and your mode of getting to work. And I live a 10-minute walk away, so I'm very accessible. So I'll probably end up having to go in extra, but not yet.
Okay. So you're not like planning to move so that you're out of the
right? Like I just move an hour away so I can't come in extra. I mean, I don't have to, but of course I'll help if it really gets bad.
Sure.
I'm sure it'll get to that spot. It's funny though, because I think the way everything's being portrayed is that hospitals are like bursting at the seams when it's actually been the opposite. There's less patients in the hospital because there's less surgeries. Like there's no elective surgeries right now.
Okay.
There's no outpatient things like I got to work in eye surgery and for like an extra shift, and they canceled that because they're just not doing anything that they don't have to do right now. So there's actually a lot less patients, but there's more outpatient.
Okay. So you said you're a float nurse. Is that like, that seems strange to still have float nurses with a disease that's like, or a virus
Yep.
that's super communicable? Is that like,
Yep.
that doesn't make sense. What's the story on that?
It doesn't make sense at all. And it's funny because we've noticed a trend that, so we're crew is what I'll call ourselves.
Okay.
We've noticed that crew is getting these COVID rule out patients a lot. Like, I don't know if they're more so than the floor nurses, but we have been getting them quite a bit. Like and I get it's a shared responsibility, but it is concerning because we go all over the place. So our hospital too has taken one of the observation floors, and completely turned it into a COVID unit. So, and we float there too. And they're actually, and while that's not fair to the nurses, that's their home base floor, to have to be in charge of all of the COVID patients is totally not fair. So I get it. We have to split the responsibility. They're like floating different nurses from different units in addition to using the float pool. So now it's kind of like we're all over the place. I have noticed that they are trying to limit the number of nurses that go into those rooms though. For instance, the past I've had was maybe 6 COVID rule out patients on the telemetry floor I was on, and only 3 nurses were in charge of them. So each nurse that had one had 2, which is a lot of responsibility. But in their defense, it's like, well, that's instead of exposing 6 different nurses, we're only exposing 3.
Okay.
So it's a small effort, but still.
Okay.
They're just trying to split it up instead of, the people that normally work on that floor would have to have COVID patients every single day for the unforeseeable future.
Okay.
Like, that's not fair. But yeah, it's kind of ironic because we would literally, if one of us contracts it, we will be floating it around the hospital for however long without knowing that we're sick.
Right.
So it's weird. I can't even suggest a better way of doing it.
Right. Interesting.
Unless they decide to hire, the only way I could think of doing it where it's fair is if they put out ads, which I don't know what kind of hero would volunteer to do this, but they put out an ad like, hey, we need to hire a certain nursing population that will, sign a contract saying you're okay with just simply taking care of these patients.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because otherwise people are going to complain and being like, well, I definitely don't want to just be on that floor.
Right.
So do they take precautions then for, like, when you go on that floor, do you have to put on a big hazmat suit? Or
Again, every hospital is different. Like,
Sure.
I know a friend at a different hospital whose PPE, personal protective equipment, I think it is, is completely different than mine, or ours. We are not doing the hazmat suits. Every hospital is incredibly low on supplies right now, which is a whole other thing. But what we are doing right now, if a patient comes in with the signs and symptoms and the public health officials decide to test them, they immediately go into isolation. And then we have to wear a gown, a regular isolation gown. It's not a suit, gloves, the N95 mask, and then we wear like goggles. It's not like the big shield, it's just like goggles. And you have to sign in and out of the room every time that you go in.
So it's not like you're just like floating to the COVID floor and your normal like everyday stuff and then just like walking out and going to the next patient. Like, there's precautions that are taken each time you enter that floor.
Well, we are wearing our regular everyday scrubs underneath all this stuff.
Okay.
That's the thing. It's like, I've heard some hospitals are letting employees rent out different scrubs, like surgical scrubs or something, when they're at work. so that they don't have to wear their regular scrubs for when they're taking care of like non-COVID patients.
Okay.
But we haven't done that yet. And so like our backs are exposed, like the back of our real scrubs, and yeah, that's not the best.
Okay. So are you or your coworkers personally scared about getting the virus then?
I'm fully preparing myself to get it, and I've been like walking around saying that, and people kind of like awkwardly laugh at that. And I just feel like there's no way that I'm not going to get a touch of it.
Right.
And I don't know. I think everyone's kind of on that same page, but people are definitely scared. Like, I know many nurses have stated concerns like, I have kids at home, or my mom has been living with me because she has cancer and I'm taking care of her and she's immunocompromised. But you can't like back out. You can't say like, oh, I'm not going to do it, because that's not fair to everyone else. So I think the general thing is no one's like scared to get it themselves. They're scared to pass it because we basically have no other choice.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty like admirable. I mean, like I think everyone is thinking about everyone in the healthcare profession right now, because you guys are, working, really, really close to this thing that everyone's scared about. So I give you huge props for that. Is there
What a time, nurse. My second year of nursing.
Yeah. Probably didn't get trained for a pandemic, or did you?
Anything I want to add? I guess, I mean, everyone, they didn't bring that up in nursing school.
Yeah.
They did not. The only thing I want to add is that everyone has been, I think just across the world, has been so amazing, like thanking nurses and doctors.
Okay.
And I would just say, like, don't forget everyone else at the hospital, like everyone else, housekeeping, respiratory therapists, speech therapists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, everyone. There's so like maintenance people. There's so many people at the hospital. So I would just say, like, don't forget about them too, because they're at the same exact risk as us. But it's nice to see how everyone is kind of stepping up and working together and trying to stay positive.
Cool. So what's the best thing a normal person can do to like help keep your guys' spirits up? Like, is there a thing that people can donate to, or like send thank yous to, or?
Of course, thank yous are always appreciated, but I think the biggest thing right now is donating masks. If anyone has a surplus of them or finds them, because she reached out to me on Instagram and she asked if our hospital is accepting homemade masks, but we actually just got a memo from the hospital last night saying that the CDC considers homemade masks to be like last resort, so we're not accepting them at the moment. But you know what? I'm pretty sure we're gonna get to that last resort. So I'll let you know when we get there, and because she said she would sew a bunch, which is super nice. But we are accepting like donations, like actual, like FDA approved masks in boxes and things. So that would be great. Other than that, I don't know if there's much else to do except doing your own part and just, again, social distancing, washing your hands, all that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for talking to me today. I appreciate it. And,
of course.
Yeah, it's super interesting. So thank you.
Yeah, I hope I answered your question somewhat well. I feel like I don't even know more than the general population, and I seriously mean that when I say that, because everything is changing by the hour, literally. So people ask me and they want like insider knowledge, and I really don't have it. So I hope that I helped answer these questions a little bit.
Absolutely. Even the knowledge you have, even if you feel like it's not more than the general public, you're a more trustworthy source. So
I guess. Oh man.
So thank you, Stephanie, so much for sitting down with me and answering all the questions that I and so many other people have. If you guys want to show some love for Stephanie, just comment and say thank you, Stephanie, so much for doing that. And I also just want to mention, normally now in the show we would end with a little musical number or a comedian or something of that sort. But today we're not going to do that. Today we're just going to say thank you to every single person who works in the healthcare profession, whether they're the cleaning crew, or the speech language pathologists, or the nurses or doctors, anyone working that close to the virus. Thank you guys so much for all of the work you're doing to keep us safe and to take care of everyone. Make sure if you can, you donate masks to your local hospital, like Stephanie said. And once again, thank you, Stephanie, so much for spending time with me on the show and answering some of the burning questions we have. With that being said, as you can see, this beer's almost gone, so the show's almost over. That was a pretty cheesy thing that I just did, but I thought it was kind of neat. If there's things you guys want to see on the show, people you want to see interviewed or things like that, feel free to comment. Let me know what you want to see on this show. This is just, it's fun. It's going to be fun. Every week we're going to sit down, we're going to talk. I'm going to give you guys interviews that I think are interesting. Some great ideas on that. And with that, we've gone over a little bit on time. So I'm going to end the show. If you liked the show, please share it. This is my first one ever, so we got to get the word out about this thing. And with that, I just want to say, I'm Nick Anderson, and I really enjoyed our time together tonight. Now, I'll see you next week at 7 o'clock. Good night.